It's
Tired. What else? Pretty relaxed. Yeah, I had to take the mid-morning session off. I'm so tired of all the talking. I had to rest. Yeah, it's hard work, like shoveling. But maybe it's also, getting used to talking. I've often thought of, well, sitting here is not just only talking. It's very energetic, But I've been thinking about, the elementary school and high school teachers who talk 20 hours a week. But they must get used to it also. Old folks like Dalai Lama, he speaks all the time. I'm just not used to it, so because of that getting tired, in a bad shape. Not that I would want to talk 20 hours a week either, but maybe, get a little bit to a better shape. Yes?
Can I just ask you about the question of talking? Because
Yeah.
in the Mastermind group, we're coming from a silent situation to talking. And I get the feeling that you encourage interaction and talking.
Yes.
A little more so than it's actually going for silence. And now, I could be, this is just my, for example, if we're actually in here, some of us may gravitate in here for a quiet spot, and you like the doors open, whereas if I want silence, I would prefer to close. This is during the breaks now, Can you say a little on that? Is it that you feel that maybe we are shying away from interaction or running from ourselves, or just
That was just concerns just the topic that I was thinking about talking and what I've discussed with some of you. The Zen and Theravada way of doing retreats, it's done of course in Mahayana and Vajrayana as well, silent retreats. So the view of practice, the Dzogchen view is different. Like I was telling you about this, some people call Dzogchen practitioners lazy because they are not doing things so much. But this view is the reason why I don't know if there will be silent retreats, open heart retreats in the future, but at the moment I feel that there will not be, because interaction is good, and certainly this sort of like being withdrawing to silence is a place to hide. It can be a place to hide. It can be therapeutic and in that sense beneficial. When practicing, shamatha and vipassana meditation, it can be good because it supports. It gives you're only to yourself, not connecting to others. So it gives you more opportunities, especially on retreat, to do your practice. But something that it's a funny thing. A couple of days ago in Facebook, the updates, the what do you call it? Like what you
Notifications.
what?
Notifications.
like what you have written there 2 years ago on this date.
Memories, posts.
Posts, Facebook posts that you have written, for example, on this date 5 years ago, it suggests if you want to again share it. And some years ago I had shared something that Sivakami said, which was that, in essence, that everybody's path is unique and everybody will have their own realizations. And because everybody's path will be unique, that's why their expression of it will be also different. And that's how it should be. And well, surely the open heart method, it quite a bit is sort of like an expression of my experiences and my wife's Pau's experiences, and a lot of reflection, how Sivakami taught, how she taught and how she thought, how she expressed, was the sum of her experiences. And how Aloka taught and thought and expressed was some of his experiences. So I think in Buddhism they give, in Tantric Buddhism, a lot of emphasis is put on the Guru, because it's the Guru who is like the essential support for Tantric practice, which makes it effective. But also Guru is somebody who is a perfect embodiment of the Dharma. And as you know, in Buddhism, like when you have the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, it's the Dharma that is considered most important. The teachings, the practices, mind training. I always say that, and I actually feel that open heart, even though I've had a lot of experiences and met so many teachers and etc., it wouldn't exist without the connection with these masters that I have. It just wouldn't have the juice, it wouldn't have the effectiveness, the power. So open heart is one kind of expression of Tantric Buddhism and Buddhism in general. One kind of expression. And Dharma mind was another kind of expression.
Is there an in-between, Kim, in relation to wanting, for example, in walking, going out walking, I prefer to go walking by myself this week because I was able to absorb a lot of what was actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
And rather
Absorbed?
Absorb, yeah.
Right.
Absorb. And to me, I thought that was beneficial, you know, really beneficial. I could actually really put into practice what in fact I was doing here, you know. Whereas if I was walking with someone else, sometimes it can be just idle chatter, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, where is there an in-between in relation, you know, to it?
Of course. Like we have talked, this idle chatter, blabbering, you can be attentive of that. On couple of evenings, on few moments I felt that on meal times it does kind of get blabbery on some moments. And because of that, when waiting for the meal to be served, I come to side or come back to meditation hall and sat to myself. Because I am responsible of my own path and my own practice. And so are you. So this way of training is different than what you're used to, but it's a learning process. Okay? Oh, there's a... I wouldn't even want to touch it. It's so high. And I was going through some of the questions that were already delivered yesterday, and in many questions it keeps repeating itself, same questions in a bit different way, asked again, so I won't address those questions. You can revisit the recordings if I haven't answered your question. And this is again a technical question about practice. During Ati Yoga, should I gaze at one point or at a greater space? How often do you use PET? Should I gaze at one point or at a greater space? Neither are Ati Yoga. I used to have in the THY1 materials this instruction of having peripheral vision, and kind of instead of looking at one tree of a forest, seeing the whole forest. But neither of them is Ati Yoga. Yes, the eyes rest on one location, but there's no energy being put into that one pointedness. You remember I was talking about mother Rigpa and child Rigpa? So mother is the helium balloon floating. And child is when it gets there is this attentiveness. An excellent example of attentiveness is that you've seen cats and dogs, when there's a sudden noise that they don't recognize, they go all eyes and ears. What was that? And then they relax when they realize that it's not dangerous. But that is attention. And attention, I define it that attention means being aware of the three-dimensional space. Ati Yoga, this mother awareness, does not concern the three-dimensional space. It doesn't concern a point in the front or a point of attention in the sides. It is free of those.
Just to clarify, sorry, that's the natural state?
What?
That's the natural state.
Yes. And so awareness, attention, and intention. Intention is what I call when so it's attention when it's in the three-dimensional space, looking at the whole forest instead of one tree, and it's intention when you put concentration into one thing or one doing, such as following the breath here, or it can be a candle flame, or it can be a pebble in front, watching at one thing. So we have intention, attention, and awareness. Awareness is the mother, attention and intention are the children. How often should you use pet? If you are shouting it constantly, not that often. If you are getting a sore throat, not that often. But still, clarifying it. Doing the practice, gaining the experiences, and clarifying to yourself what the natural state is, what Ati Yoga is. You are doing pets well.
Can I just ask one?
Yes.
Pets. I've noticed some people have got, but your one is very sharp. Pretty sharp.
Mm?
But how can you improve your sharpness with pet shout?
By practicing it, by practicing the shouting.
Is there something you can focus on? It's like, it's almost like you can visualize a sharpness or something.
No, just shouting it. When you are in your home, do 100 shouts for a week, every day. Learn it,
Was there somewhere came in your instruction that you actually said to take it from, is it from the belly here?
Yes.
That in fact that there should be a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the muscles here in the gut.
Yeah.
This.
Can I also ask, obviously you're affected by other people's pets, or how should we on ourselves be affected by other people's pets? What's the collective effect of us meditating together and saying pet, or is there an effect?
Of course there is. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes none. But I'm sure you have felt that when somebody shouts sharply, it kind of, clarifies. And some use it as an excuse not to shout themselves. That's a mistake in practice. Everybody, like I said, are responsible for their own are responsible of their own. There is a question of having these spontaneous movements during sitting. Should I actively try to bypass this sensation or movement? Actively bypassing, not forcing it, not killing it, like aggressively or something, but just let it bypass. Is actually a good word. Let it bypass. Save the Rushen for its own time. Have you any brief words of advice on engaging with life immediately after the retreat? Not really. We were talking about this on day 1 or day 2, that how the tantrics and Dzogchen practitioners, how they practice, what the daily practice is. And first, it's getting to the natural state. If it doesn't work as a method for you, as a technique for you, then mantras. For such a devotional practice, there is no bowing. Do you see a role for bowing? We used to do this it's called 9-point bowing. So you come up, you touch the forehead and crown, forehead and heart, and then you go all the way to the floor, flat on the belly, hands above the head joint. We used to do that with mantras in place of Rushen before for some time. But I feel that Rushen is better. It better addresses everybody's own body. I was mentioning traditional Tibetan Buddhist tantric preliminaries the other day, and one of the preliminaries is to do 100,000 of those full bows. And it's a really good practice. I really enjoy it myself. I sometimes do it, but not regularly. But what is bowing? That's a good question. Bowing is having a sincere and open heart. And whether it's like a bow in a sitting position or bowing down your head, it's just an expression of that. Sincerity, humbleness, approaching the Dharma, approaching the Guru, like that. So, do I see any role for that sincerity and humbleness? Of course. Oh, this is a good one. I am uneasy about having to pay for the Dharma, to PF guidance, empowerments, etc. I have been used to the Dharma being free. Well, it's a good question. In the Orient, in Asia, in all the old Buddhist countries there, the society and supporters have supported temples, monasteries. They have given money and food for them to keep going. So there has been this exchange, for a couple of thousand years. In some countries, the monks go out early in the morning with their begging bowls, and they, lay people are lined up with rice or money, and they give it to the monks. They go every morning asking for it. So, has it been free? There has been this exchange before to keep the Dharma going. But here in the West, in the capitalistic systems, I once heard that I don't remember who it was, but somebody had said that within a capitalistic system, a smaller socialistic unit cannot operate perfectly. And I think there's a bit of truth there. Apart from that, I don't think that there probably will be monastic Buddhism in the West to some bit, but I don't really think that the future of Buddhism, whether Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, whatever, is in monasteries. I think it won't similarly develop as it has developed in Asia, in the East. And because of that, it's financially different situation. So, in regards to open heart, I have tried to keep the fees reasonable, yet so that we can cover all the costs and I get my living from it. I didn't, by the way. For the first 7.5 years, I wasn't making any money from it. It was really hard, because every year it was on the minus side, 7.5 years. And also there is always the notice of in the fee information that if you don't have the money for it, you can just arrange for a lower fee. We do Tibetan Heart Yoga only once a day. Does that mean we should do it only once a day in daily life? Is there benefit to doing it more often? Could doing it twice be harmful? So retreat, usually on retreats we do it only once. The second tantric session is the Guru Yoga session, and then have something interesting, workshopping, studying of some topics on the other two sessions, just like we've had the 5 immeasurables on this one. At least do it once a day. You who have history in Dharma Mind practice, you are already accustomed to sitting and daily practice. So if you would like to do Tibetan Heart Yoga twice a day at home, you can. You have my permission to do it. Having said that, if you'd like to increase the numbers of cycles and let's say practice more than 2-3 hours more than that, then give me, tell me, let me know. But I don't think that you have such a solid sitting history that I don't think there would be any problems. Just when I switched from Zen sitting to tantric practice, I was sitting a lot, as I've told you, 8 hours a day, and I just overnight switched it to tantric practices, continuing 8 hours. Yeah, but also, as it has been mentioned, keep connection to the Guru, to Padmasambhava and or Yeshe Tsogye. So I usually recommend practicing Tibetan Heart Yoga once, and if you want to do another sitting session, then practice Guru Yoga, like half an hour session. In Ati Yoga, as I relax, my vision seems to go soft and I see more of the room, but my vision becomes blurry. Is this the right direction of travel, or should I invoke pet mantra to keep my vision clear? We were talking about this with Luke yesterday evening, a little bit of the same topic. The eyes getting used to the practice, and that's what it is. So when you have, I also had it at some point that the vision would go blurry, and the awareness in the eyes would recede back inside the head, and then it would connect with the eye organs. It would do that kind of going back and coming to the front of the eyes, and it would go back and front. But then it just stopped happening at some point. So a question of familiarization. Would it be wise to refer someone with no previous meditation experience to the 2-part formula and open heart during the coming months and years? P.S. Thank you for the leading of the workshops/retreat. It's been genuinely wonderful. Well, that's a bonus. Would it be wise to refer someone with no? Of course. We were talking about workshopping on the compassion, relating Dharma to others. That's it, right? Right? Yes, tell others. How does open heart system of Bumi mapping compare with other Bumi models? That is, are the levels of attainment or clarity at each Bumi opening in open heart Bumi model the same as corresponding Bumi openings in other Buddhist schools, traditions, vehicles? I know other Bumi systems focus on sutra or insight into nature of mind, but is the clarity nonetheless the same? Thanks. So, when having a selfless insight into selflessness of the mind, emptiness of the mind, that is of course about nature of the mind, Buddha nature. Of course, it couldn't be anything else. As it was mentioned earlier, there are the four paths in Theravada, for example, the 4 stages of practice in Mahamudra, 5 ranks of Tozan in Zen Buddhism, and I think they also have some kind of stage map in Pure Land Buddhism. How does the open heart system of Bumi mapping compare with other Bumi models? Well, there are the texts of Bumis in Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana, but as I said earlier, they are not using it the same way we are. They are not actually using it. Although having said that, which I also mentioned earlier, if you go to a Zen master of the Rinzai school and you say that I might have had an awakening, the master will measure you and also maybe test you to see if there has been a shift. So there are some relations, but as such, like we do it, it doesn't exist. And I didn't come up with it, by the way. I had done energy reading in art, in Zen calligraphy, in Buddhist calligraphy, in Reiki. I used to study Reiki quite a bit, so I already knew a thing or two about energy work. I studied to become a shiatsu therapist. And then, of course, I had already some years of tantric practice under my belt when Tirumulan, who I mentioned, one of the great Hindu Mahasiddhas of the Mahasiddha family, he gave me the idea that, this path can be mapped to these awakenings relate to these centers inside your head and the centers above your head, and it can be directly connected to those. He gave me the idea of it. And Maciej Labdron, when we had the shift from in open heart from Kriya Yoga to Buddhist Tantra, Maciej Labdron kept instructing according to that what we call open heart Bumi model now, and so has Padmasambhava. And that's actually the genius of open heart Bumi model. It doesn't matter what the doctrine is you are studying or following. Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, whatever. If you have an insight, a person who knows how to do Bumi mapping will be able to detect it. No matter who you are. And that doesn't happen. This way of mapping these awakenings transcends the borders of traditions and systems. it's universal. It applies to anyone. Yeah. But having said that, to be able to map boomies properly, it requires training. You have to study it and train in it. I've done it like really studied reading energies since 2003. And now I feel quite comfortable with it, quite confident with it. But also, I wasn't taught the way how I teach my students, so it's faster acquiring those skills. That know-how is faster because of that. Okay.
Kim,
Yes.
so have any of the Open Heart Sangha members been independently verified as regards Bhumi openings, as far as you're aware?
Independently?
Independently by some other teacher?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you mean, has some other teacher given them Bhumi verifications or other verifications?
Yeah, has it been independently verified that in fact that if you say that someone has actually the 8th Bhumi has opened, for example, to your knowledge, have any of the Sangha members gone to an independent individual of you to ask, oh, well, has 8th opened or...
Well, that's the thing, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They don't speak of, they don't speak like that in, as far as I know, in any other school of Buddhism. But I've had a bit of contact with the so-called pragmatic Dharma movement in the US that was started by this wonderful guy called Bill Hamilton and 2 of his students, Kenneth Falk and Daniel Ingram. The basic idea of the pragmatic Dharma movement is that they mostly are Theravada practitioners and very devoted practitioners, did a lot of training, but they started to openly speak about their experiences without any, authority issues, like an open source Dharma. And there's also one open heart practitioner who was verified 4th path according to their standards, who then took up open heart practices because he felt that he wasn't finished, but he was finished according to their system. But I had this discussion with Dan Ingram 2-3 years ago, and you can find the discussion recorded from YouTube. And he was also interested in open heart Bhumi model, and he was asking me what his Bhumi might be. And they have publicly said or claimed, like Dan Ingram and Kenneth Falk, that they have attained 4th path, which is the culmination, the end of the Theravada path. In other words, they claim to be arhats. And they are consistently those who go through their way of training and are verified 4th paths by their teachers, whether Ingram or Falk or some other. There are several other teachers in pragmatic Dharma movement. They are consistently 6 Bhumis open. So there is this one man who actually lives in the UK, who went through that training and since then took up OH. So that's one example that I can relate now. What else could I say? Yeah. Oh yeah. Then there's been a bunch of people who let's see if I have any cases the other way around. There has been few people, I think, who have had awakenings, and which I could, when they started open heart practice, I could see that it has been first Bhumi opening. Those cases there are a couple, and then, but I was thinking if there had been the other way around, if there had been open heart practitioners who woke up through the 2PF, who then had it verified with another teacher, but I don't think there are any cases like that. But you know what? Many of you are awakened. Hook up with some Buddhist teacher in the UK. Go and ask. Go and ask what they say. And that's actually what I recommend while having one's own practice and path clear, seeing other teachers, attending teachings of other schools of Buddhism, also doing retreats if you have time for it and money for it. Certainly I recommend that. And certainly I recommend studying. Buddhism has a amazing resource of texts and commentaries by contemporary teachers and masters and historical teachers and masters, autobiographies. Read stuff.
Do you recommend maybe one or two that people can refer to?
Well, I mentioned biographies, so Milarepa's autobiography is a good read. I'm not a big reader myself. I buy books, but I never read them. Or I do read them, but it's just, half a page at a time. I check something every now and then. Then there's this one thick book by Daniel Brown, American Mahamudra and Dzogchen teacher. The title is Pointing Out the Great Way. He outlines and draws material from many classics about those 4 Mahamudra stages that I was talking about, or have referred to a few times. What else? There's of course the we have 2 reading empowerments at the moment in Open Heart. The first one is Song of the Vajra, which you received. The second one is a much longer text. It's by a Dzogchen master whose name is Longchenpa. Longchenpa. Or Longchen Rabacham. Longchen Rabacham. And the name of the text, the book is, it's a long title, it's Precious Treasury. Can you remember it, Carl? Precious Treasury of Knowing Knowledge. I can't remember either. Treasure Trove of the Precious Treasury of Knowledge. Perhaps. And it's the I have it in PDF. I can send it to you after the retreat. But if you want to buy the book, get the one that has the commentary by Longchenpa, his own commentary. Not only the verses. So that's a classic. That's like a big classic of Dzogchen. What else? Well, I like Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche's books. He passed away in 96, I think. Yeah, but those are a few books at least.
What about having some of these texts?
Oh yes, there is a Duchamp Limpa. Duchamp Limpa is one of the recent great Dzogchen masters who attained rainbow body. He passed away in 1904. His works were recently translated into English by Alan Wallace. It's available. This 1500 pages must be. That's a good one.
Can you spell the name of the master?
Dudjom, Duchamp, and the second part, the second name is Lingpa, Lingpa, Duchamp Limpa, and Alan Wallace. So, and Alan Wallace has translated Padmasambhava's Natural Liberation. That's a good book. I think he has also translated some other texts by Padmasambhava. But Alan Wallace in general is a good translator, as is Erik Pema Kunzang, the Lama from whom I got Rimsel from. Erik Pema Kunzang.
In terms of going to retreats with other teachers and other traditions,
Mm-hmm.
is there not a danger of confusing yourself?
Yes.
Mixed messages.
Yes,
Why do you recommend it?
I said that if you have your path and practice clear, if you don't, then there is a chance of getting mixed up. But at this point, what's reasonable for you is to, properly get your open heart practice going. But in general, I give that recommendation because that's what is traditionally done. It's students are encouraged to go to other teachers and get a more round. Yeah. Okay, I think this is enough for discussion. Let's sit 10-15 minutes before the break. And by the way, we have at 3:30 we have the meeting with group leaders. Joe, Tom, James, Mike, John, Matt, Carl. 3:30 up there.